It's now my pleasure to introduce this message from Mayor Lori E. Lightfoot. For our international guests, Mayor Lightfoot is Chicago's first Black female mayor and first openly gay mayor.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, and it's my honor to be here at the 6th Annual Global Youth Ambassadors Leadership Summit. I'd like to begin by giving a huge congratulations to our 50 ambassadors from Chicago and our international sister cities for being leaders within their communities. You have each proven that no one is too young to engage in civic discussions, and your advocacy and activism have paved pathways for other young girls like yourselves to get into leadership positions and bring diverse perspectives to the decision and policy-making table. As our journey with COVID-19 continues, it has never been more important for women to have access to leadership opportunities. Because when women lead, we not only create more inclusive solutions to the challenges our communities face, challenges such as climate change, mental health, and gender-based violence, but we also empower girls and women across the world to chase their dreams and become agents of change. As a first Black woman to lead as Chicago's mayor, leadership to me means fearlessly rising to any challenge, not despite of the identities I carry, but because of them. It also means not being afraid to pull up several seats at the table for myself and others to influence conversations that impact us but have historically left us out. After this summit, I encourage you all to do the same by believing in your ability to generate long-lasting, positive change and always standing up for what's right. By doing so, I am beyond confident that you will be able to conquer any challenges that come your way and accomplish each and every one of your goals. Thank you all, and congratulations on completing this summit.
Thank you, Mayor Lightfoot. We appreciate her support of the summit and I encourage our ambassadors to take her advice. And now I am so excited that we're joined by Jody Williams, Nobel Peace Prize laureate and activist. Since her protest of the Vietnam War, she has been a lifelong advocate of freedom, self-determination, and human and civil rights. Jody received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1997 for her work with the international campaign to ban landmines. At that time, she became the 10th woman in its almost 100-year history to receive the prize. Jody is also the co-founder of the Nobel Women's Initiative. In 2004, she was named by Forbes magazine as one of the 100 most powerful women in the world. And she believes that working for peace is not for the faint of heart. Jody?
Hi, everybody. Can you see me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I'm always humbled when I'm asked to speak because of, my so-called fame or influence because of the Nobel Peace Prize. I insist that I am an ordinary grassroots activist who with others brought about massive change in the world. The things that I've heard in the speakers before are things that I will echo because I believe everything they said. Let me see here. I'm going to talk for 15 minutes and then I would like questions and answers if you have any. And I hope you do. And don't be shy. There's no such thing as a stupid question. I think often activists, especially women, because we have been second class or third class or fourth class citizens in the world in our countries, feel that taking action is kind of pointless because it takes so long to bring about change. As we heard from the first speaker, the Deputy Chancellor, it takes a long time often to bring about change. But I also believe that people want us to believe that change is so difficult that we shouldn't even bother. And I totally reject that premise. I know I can't change everything. It's impossible. But I do know that if I work with others toward a common goal, it's not me, it's we together can make changes in the world. Don't ever let somebody tell you you can't do it. The only stop to yourself is yourself. Please believe that you have the capacity when you work collectively to bring about significant change, including change you never expected, as the Deputy Chancellor mentioned. I'm going to talk about that for a few minutes in terms of the landmine campaign. In 1992, I was asked to create a campaign to try to prohibit the use, production, trade, and sale of landmines. Why landmines? They stay in the ground or in the rivers or in trees for decades after a war ends, and they can continue to maim and kill people. To me, when I was invited to think about it, it just seemed sort of like a no-brainer, right? If these things are in the ground forever, we should work to stop them. And I remember sitting in the office where I was asked to think about the campaign and thinking, oh my God, this is going to take forever. But then thinking also that even if we don't get a treaty for decades, we can bring about change in the lives of people who live with landmines. So that was, exciting to think about. Who knew what changes we could, make? Nobody was doing anything on landmines, so let's start. And as the Deputy Chancellor, again, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name, said, you start small. When we started the landmine campaign, there were 2 NGOs, one in Germany that did medical humanitarian relief, and one in the US that was Vietnam veterans, who certainly knew the cost of landmines, and a staff of 1, me. But it was 2 NGOs from different countries, so I could call it the International Campaign to Ban Landmines, which sounds formidable. It became formidable. We grew from 2 NGOs to 1,300 in about 90 countries around the world, working together in planned action to ban landmines, and we succeeded. We succeeded because every person, every NGO in the campaign had the space to contribute to the campaign in their own way. For example, I'm not very clever with slogans and things like that, but a woman from Hungary who is still a colleague in our campaign to stop killer robots, she could whip up a slogan that would freak out the government representatives every day. And by freak out, I mean, her slogans made people think deeply after hearing about few words. But if we didn't have all of the kinds of people and expertise that we had, we would not have been successful in our people-to-people diplomacy, in our citizens' diplomacy. We believed, and I still believe, and I will always believe, that each and every person on this planet has the right to voice their opinion and have their voices heard. It should never be so-called important people in a capital telling us what we need. We know what we need. Our voices should be at the table so that policies don't just reflect the thinking of, excuse me, but a bunch of men. In my case, especially a bunch of white men. But to get that to happen, we have to dare to believe that our voice matters, and understand that no one person alone will bring about change. But when we work together, we can change this world. And we also achieve changes that we never expected. In the landmine campaign, of course, the day we achieved the treaty, we were like hysterical with joy, to be completely honest. And even some of the government representatives who helped bring about the treaty, because they're the only ones who can negotiate a treaty, were joyous. I remember the French ambassador was a woman at the time who said, you know, this is one time that governments come together with civil society and do what they should have done anyway. Think about that. Governments came together with civil society to do what they should have done anyway. That is part of the reason I firmly believe that we must stand up for what we believe in. We must strategize. We must know the information that we are talking about is exact and precise and true. The campaign did that. We were able to have people who dug mines out of the ground. We were able to have people who did prosthetic devices. We were able to have organizations that knew international law and why these weapons violated it. With all that expertise, governments began coming to us for information that they couldn't possibly have on their own. And that was gratifying. And it was also the basis upon which the trust governments had in us in the campaign was built. They didn't always agree with us, but they knew we were speaking truth. And that's critical. For me, the most important thing as an activist for decades is always speaking my truth. Never trying to pump things up or minimize things, but saying what I know to be true. If you do that consistently, people believe you because they know you have a vast history of talking truth to them and accepting them as government officials, which was hard for me in the beginning, by the way, because they have to be partners in change. I had worked in Central America. I keep looking at my clock. In Central America, where I didn't trust governments at all. So making the leap to work with government representatives on the landmine campaign was huge for me. But it made all the difference in the world. Many of them believed in banning landmines as much as we did. When we were recognized with the Nobel Peace Prize in 1997, I think it was only 3 weeks after the treaty was negotiated successfully in September of 1997, the Nobel Committee decided to recognize the work of the campaign, myself as well as the coordinator of the campaign, because not only because we had created a treaty that made a vision of a world without landmines a possibility, a real possibility, but also because the model that arose from our work has influenced other organizations and individuals to use that same model, bringing in diversity of voices, diversity of expertise, talking truth to power. And it has been used in the campaign for a nuclear weapon treaty, which was 2017. It worked banning cluster bombs in 2008. It has been used for many other campaigning issues that have nothing to do with disarmament, which is one of the things I've worked on for too long, maybe. And I'm proud of the treaty, of course, because that changes the life of people all around the world. But I'm equally as amazed, I guess, that the model that arose, we didn't sit down and think this is our model, right? We were just working, and as we worked, the model developed. It has affected multitudinous things around the world, including the International Criminal Court, the Arms Trade Treaty. I can't think of other things at the moment because there's so many. The landmine campaign, how it functions, which still functions, has been studied in high schools and universities around the country and the world to see, what made this civil society process work so well to influence governments to change what they did on landmines. And that's a pretty swell thing. Who would believe it? I'm looking at my clock. I am a woman from a teeny town in the state of Vermont on the Canadian border of the US. My parents did not finish high school. I was born in a town of 1,200 people. Who would have ever thought that I could join with others to influence policies all around the world? Now I keep thinking, wow, how did that happen? It happened because I believe firmly that each and every one of us has a voice that can contribute to change. I'll just say finally, what is the difference between a so-called ordinary people, an ordinary person, and extraordinary people? Is what they do together to bring about change. It's not themselves, it's how they work with others. Sorry, there was a note and I couldn't read it, it's too fast. It's how we work together to bring about extraordinary change. And we have the power and the right to act as citizen diplomats to see a better world for us all, including people we do not like. And believe me, I may have a Nobel Peace Prize, but I am no saint. There are many people I'm not particularly fond of. However, if I only want the world to be better for me and my friends, that's like a political party, right? I have a total vision that the world has to be better for every person in it. And that's working with people with that vision is extraordinary. It's exciting. It's exciting to see how people can come together and bring about lasting change. And I know each and every one of you will do it. You're so young and you're already starting and thinking about it. I wonder what I would have done if I had started when I was your age. But I think with my pals, with my other activists and colleagues, we've made a dent in making the world a better place. And if everybody focuses on the thing that most excites them or most enrages them, because it is, unjust, unfair, all of those things together build up to massive change. Thank you. Thank you for letting me be here. And if anybody wants to ask a question, please feel free. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jody. Ambassadors, if you have any questions, please raise your hand and Ramona will call on you. And remember to introduce yourself with your name and your city to Jody.
Fantastic. It looks like we have questions from several of our ambassadors. So Umang from New Delhi, let's start with you.
When you ask a question, can you turn your camera on so I can see you? Yay!
Hello. Hi. I just wanted to first of all say that thank you so much for being here today. Just listening to you was awe-inspiring, honestly. You're such an inspiration. When you talked about your experience, you extensively said that the sort of world of advocacy isn't very centric towards women, especially women like me who are people of color.
Sure.
And you mentioned that you were the only staffer when the entire ocracy started. Honestly, my real question is, on the harder days, what kept you going? Because
Mhm.
I, for me, something I genuinely struggle a lot with is remembering that my voice has power. Even though I say it, it's difficult to remember it at times. What, in those hard times, what kept you going really?
Uh-huh. I think, well, specifically in the case of that campaign, it was partly because so many organizations and individuals wanted to join it. And so many of them brought such exciting ideas. And in each country where we had campaigns, let's say we wanted to try to influence the national government to take a step. Each campaign in each country would know best how to approach their own government, correct? So we never told people how to do it. We just all agreed it would be a good thing to try to influence national policy as well and move forward. And when I was as amazed as anybody that there were so many people. My God, who expected it? But when so many people see the need for a common good, it's really hard to get upset. I certainly do at times. The world is, as we all know, not easy to work in as a woman, but I think it's getting really, really, really different. Young women, I love hearing young women's voices, the energy, the excitement, and helping them to believe that you have the right to speak. You have the right to be anywhere and do anything you want. And when I do get bummed out, which happens occasionally, I bring together a bunch of books that I want to read. I'm a bookworm from the time I was like 5. And I lay in bed and just read for several days to get away from the world of activism, and that helps. I also work out, but I've been bad the last year. But working out helps too. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Among. Next, we have a question from Karen from Amman.
Hi, I'm Karen. I'm from Amman. And my question is, what's the biggest setback you faced, and what's one piece of advice you'd give yourself at that time?
Well, it certainly wasn't with the landmine campaign. Within 5 years, we had miraculously, but not miraculously, it was because we worked together. It was more when I worked in Central America. I was working in primarily Salvador, also Nicaragua, during the 1980s, when the US was continuing its interventions in the region, when Salvadorans themselves were trying to bring about change. Same in Nicaragua. And the US has not changed, was just so blind to the long-term negative impacts of their policies. Sometimes it's called blowback. And trying to speak with them, with the government people, and have them open their mind was very difficult, especially if you're a diplomat, right? You may feel something differently, you may think something differently, but you have to talk the party line. And that was discouraging from time to time. But then, just you think about it and think about what good you can bring, even if you cannot, make it mad, if you can't bring about peace in one day, I'm not doing anything. Well, good God, think about how we feel when we try to change ourselves, right? There's something about me I don't like. I want to change it. And maybe you make one teeny baby step forward and then you go right back to how you were. And then you try again and you go back to how you were. If it's hard for us individually, think about trying to change the mechanics and thinking and, of people in different countries, cultures, languages. It's a challenge, but it's a challenge that we must make, in my view. And I think you'll be terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we have time for one more question, and this will be from Anushka from Chicago.
Hi, my name is Anushka. I'm from Chicago. Thank you for speaking. It was really, really nice hearing you. So, being a woman in the 1990s and even now in pursuing a professional field, you're bound sometimes to face sexism or societal norms and expectations. Did you face any sexism or societal norms and expectations, identity-based, in your career and perhaps landmine campaign from governmental organizations and perhaps even allied organizations?
To be honest, I never felt discriminated against because I was a woman. I think part of it was my family raised all 5 children, 3 girls and 2 boys, raised us all to believe that we could do anything we wanted in the world. And that base really does affect one over a lifetime more than I recognized at the moment. Also, I had my grandfather's stubbornness. I truly believe that I have a right and a privilege to speak, and I must do it to try to, as I say, make the world better for everybody. And when I first started working in Central America, sexism is a huge issue there, but I refused to recognize or accept any attempts to make me into a girl who should shut up. And as people realize that you're very serious, you know what you're talking about, and you refuse to use your womanly wiles to get what you want, it wasn't an issue for me. Probably because, as I say, my grandfather's stubbornness. And when I was 13, I realized that I would not live my life as a popularity contest. I was going to say what I believed, and I was going to act what I believed. And, it takes time for that to really sink in. That was a huge and important thing for myself, to allow me to not care if you don't like me. I'm not trying, as I say, the popularity contest thing. You don't have to like me. You have to listen to me and think about the things that I'm saying with other people in the world. Now, I'm going to stop by saying thank you again. And I'll never forget one question. I can't remember which, I've been to 80 countries in my work. I can't remember which one I was in, but there was a press conference and a young man stood up and said to me, what role do women have to play in peace building? Typical question, sexist, horrifying. I just looked at him and I said, what role do men have to play in peace building? He was stunned. It blew me away how stunned he was. I said, and he looked at me really like some little light bulb had gone off in his brain and said, whoa, I have never been asked that, and I do not have an answer. Just turn the table. Thank you for letting me be part of this. I'm looking forward to hearing your projects. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jody. And I know that the students had a lot more questions for you. We'll share some resources and links of videos of Jody talking about her work. One of the coolest things about my job, and one of my favorite things about the summit, besides working with the ambassadors, is that I get to meet and be inspired alongside them by our amazing speakers. So we very much appreciate your time today and sharing your experiences. Now it's time for our group presentations. The ambassadors spent the week exploring the idea of gender equity and how it relates to a number of issues affecting women around the world. Each group worked together to create a gender equity scorecard, which is a tool used by many international organizations to measure how they were doing in achieving gender equity. The ambassadors created their own scorecards to evaluate how their home cities are doing with regard to achieving gender equity in a certain area. Audience, please ask questions in the Q&A section. You can also upvote other questions that you'd like answered. Ambassadors, please remember to introduce yourselves with your first name and city. Group 1, you're up.
Hi, my name is Emily. I'm from Chicago and I am a part of Group 1, and we are focusing on women in STEM.
Hi, my name is Leonela and I'm from Paris.
Hi, my name is Luna and I'm from Lucerne, Switzerland.
Hi, my name is Nina and I'm from Chicago.
Hi, my name is Soroya and I'm also from Chicago.
Next slide.
Before we deep dive into our gender equity scorecard, we're excited to share what we learned and ask that if you have any questions, feel free to ask at the end. Enjoy.
So we decided to give a 3 to Paris. During our research, we found out that 20% of women work in STEM jobs. This is mainly due to the stereotypes that have roots since childhood. Along with that, people tend to underestimate the lack of women in STEM fields, saying that in the past, French female scientists were able to do their research and that it shouldn't be a problem nowadays, or by saying that there is too much being done for women. And then finally, women working in STEMs face also a hostile environment, as sexist remarks can be made, and they also face a pay gap of 15%. So we gave her 3 because the country is well aware of the lack of women in STEM jobs, and they have ideas to solve the issue. However, they're just ideas, so nothing is really concrete right now, making a low progress and forcing women to take actions by themselves instead of having the help of the government.
Our score for Lucerne is a 2. In Lucerne and Switzerland as a whole, only about 22% of women graduate in STEM subjects. This is mainly due to prejudice and stereotypes surrounding the STEM fields. In addition, women earn about 12% less than men in STEM jobs. Switzerland has one of the worst education gap between sexes in STEM school education. We decided to score Lucerne with a 2 because there is still room for change, starting with stereotypes and prejudice. However, there are already some ideas and projects to attract women to STEM fields, such as the STEM Women's Network, which is focused on motivating young girls to pursue STEM subjects.
Our score for Chicago was a 3, and that's because while half the workforce in America is women, only 27% of STEM jobs are filled by women. In addition, there's also a pay gap in STEM. And part of the reason why there are few women in STEM is because the stereotypes discourage girls from pursuing STEM fields, especially computer and engineering jobs, especially. And there's also a hostile work environment. So a lot of people who major in STEM majors don't go into the field because of male, skewed policies. Our reasoning for giving Chicago a 3 is because Chicago has developed since like the 1970s in terms of, representation, but work can still be done in breaking stereotypes and making spaces comfortable for women.
As we did our research, we found many overlapping factors that affect the number of women in STEM in Paris, Lucerne, and Chicago. These bullet points show some of the reasons why women may not go into STEM fields and occupations. As you can see here, all three cities seem to be affected by gender stereotypes and norms, the lack of progress being made, the uncomfortable environment of the workspace, the pay gap, and an overall lack of visibility around STEM fields and occupations. There are also differences between the three cities. For example, a unique factor that affects Paris is that notion that there's too much being done for women, so this shouldn't be a problem. This ends up creating a detrimental idea that as long as there is some action being taken, the problem doesn't matter. A unique factor affecting Lucerne is the post-high school education gap between the sexes, which affects the number of women studying STEM fields in college. Also, a unique factor affecting Chicago is the fact that women tend to attribute their success in STEM fields to luck rather than skill, and also that there tends to be a lack of mother-friendly policies in the workspace.
As we highlighted in the last slide, there are clearly main factors that affect the number of women in STEM, which means that these are where we need to improve. Our first suggestion for improvement is to expand childcare coverage because single working mothers often don't have a way to take care of their children while at work. New mothers often do not return to work after giving birth because of the pressure and lack of time, so our next suggestion is to lengthen and expand the paid maternity leave. One of the biggest factors we saw was that women felt uncomfortable in the male-dominated workplace, which is why we proposed that jobs should try to build connections to develop empathy between the workers and to make the female work experience more positive. In a study done in 2009, it was reported that for every dollar earned by a man, women in STEM earned 86 cents, which is why our next suggestion is to decrease the pay gap between women and men in STEM. Lastly, we should begin to normalize women in STEM fields and break down the gender stereotypes that say which jobs women can and can't do. Overall, we have many suggestions for ways that society and workplaces can begin to improve in order to help the number of women in STEM fields.
We thank you for your time. In summation, it's evident that there's much room for improvement in the world of STEM. Females are faced with the universal challenge of gender stereotypes, which can be extremely restricting. In order to combat this issue, spreading awareness about it is the first step. Now that you know of these impacts, we ask that you share this knowledge to make a change. Thank you.
Thank you, Group 1. Now Group 2. Group 2, you're up.
Hello, we are Group 2 and our project is on combating gender-based violence. My name is Audrey and I'm from Chicago.
Hello, my name is Halima and I'm from Chicago.
Hello, my name is Camilla and I'm from Moscow.
Hi, my name is Nikita and I'm from Durban.
Hi, my name is Zara and I'm from Lahore.
Before we start, we'd like to say a poem about being a woman in our cities. Vibrant and bold, we definitely heard their voice. Those are the women from Chicago, Illinois. Struggles in the past, concrete pillars ingrained in our history. Their successes won't be forgotten. Yes, women of Durban.
Next, we'll move on to our gender equity scorecard.
Our indicator is the government policy against gender-based violence in the workplace and household and their effectiveness. Next.
Next slide, sorry.
Next slide. Yeah.
Pakistan is ahead of many South Asian countries in terms of having specific legislation against sexual harassment at the workplace. There is a toolkit to understand and train up cases of sexual harassment, and 1,000 courts have been set up for gender-based violence cases. Lahore is a 3 as victim blaming is still relevant in courts and law enforcement, and only 58.6% of people believe their workplace takes harassment complaints seriously.
The victims in Chicago are afraid to talk about their situation because of the stigmatization, but the government is trying to improve situation. Mayor Lightfoot created a gender-based violence advisory group are calling public health crisis. We rated Chicago a 4. In Chicago are 2 government dogs on gender-based violence and sexual assault. And other systems support women too. In 2020, over 11,000 calls, over 500 messages were received. Next slide.
In the first week of the COVID-19 lockdown, the South African Police Services reported receiving over 2,000 calls for help. There are several barriers to justice for victims, including a lack of trust in the criminal justice system and secondary trauma, which survivors often survive or suffer at the hands of authorities when they report cases. We rated Durban a 2 because there has been public outrage about the institutional failures, though the country's Domestic Violence Act explicitly states that victims make criminal complaints.
Next slide, please. Due to the conformities of Russian society, many cases of violence, especially sexual harassment, go unreported by women. In 2017, the Russian parliament decriminalized many violent offenses, withdrawing legal protections for victims. Since approximate statistics are hard to find, it is estimated that 60% of violent crimes against women are not brought to light. We rated Moscow a 2 due to the gaps in the legal infrastructure protecting rights of women in their households and from their employers, as well as insufficient statistics.
Now we will explain suggested improvements and what each city can learn from each other.
To see these stats above improve, there has to be proper training for those empowered to handle sexual assault cases in the workplace and women who know and understand gender-based violence cases who work with these. There also must be more severe punishment for employers or colleagues who have assaulted their workers. Lahore does set an example for some countries because of their help stations staffed only by women.
In Chicago, we wouldn't correct the laws, but we need to tell women what to do in a situation of violence and where to turn. And it's also necessary to tell children about respect for each other and respect for personal boundaries. Next slide.
The programs offered through schools may prevent positive attitudes toward gender-based violence and promote gender equity amongst youth. An attitude shift at the community and family level is needed. Adopting school-based programs could help young people become agents of change to improve safety in the civil society and extending their activities outside of school. I recommend including traditional leaders of locals as they are intermediaries, community-based organizations to mobilize social transformations within. Next slide.
A state survey in 2017 showed that 59% of Russians supported decriminalizing domestic violence, which dropped to 26% in 2019. This shows that advocating done is vital and should only be intensified, backed up by organizations, to gain the support of the Russian Federation and Orthodox Church. The laws of Russia should include all forms of harm, like what's included the Illinois Domestic Violence Law, the Pakistan's Protection Against Harassment of Women at the Workplace Act as well.
The Russian Federation has implemented the Science National Project, which encourages women and girls to participate in STEM careers. If such large-scale initiatives are adopted by their cities, it can mitigate a cause of gender-based violence in the workplace, which is women in low-status jobs, by developing their skills.
We have now reached the end of our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Group 2. Group 3, you're up.
Hi, my name is Anushka. I'm from Chicago.
Hi, I'm Grace from Galway.
Hi, I'm Hola from Casablanca.
Hi, I'm Rose from Birmingham. Next slide.
So what is each city doing well? Chicago is at $8 million of grant money allocated towards mental health care programs for its vast number of communities. There are several mental health facilities in the city, including NAMI, which is an organization we had a speaker speak to us about. Something that's interesting about Chicago and generally US cities is the Gen Z population, so basically the youth, because they seem to acknowledge how important mental health is by a bunch of initiatives such as the Mental Health Awareness Month and a lot of other things. In Casablanca, there have been several significant efforts to develop the healthcare offered to improve the quality of management of patients with mental disorders, which result in reducing unsuitable asylum structures while improving access to care through referral to community. Birmingham has had a variety of ways to access both digital and in person, which is really important considering what times we're in right now, for no additional cost for any counseling or medication. And many of these services target the youth. In Galloway, they're not doing so great tackling mental health, but Ireland's suicide rate is below the average, and awareness surrounding mental health is growing. And one example is the Waffle Cafe, a really kind of unique idea which was set up for mental health support.
How do each of the cities compare? Chicago has room for improvement, however, is not the worst. Chicago takes mental health seriously and it has a large number of behavioral health hospitalizations. Casablanca, the city of Casablanca needs to improve and show more engagement in terms of mental health. The effects cannot obscure insufficient human and material resources. Birmingham, compared to other irrelevant cities, Birmingham has done well. Birmingham has a vast array of professionals that are easily accessed, and the overall societal perception of mental health is less stigmatized. Galway doesn't look great compared to cities like Birmingham and Chicago, although I struggle to gather stats on Galway specifically. Ireland overall has a lot less public facilities for mental health per capita.
What can each city improve on? Chicago can improve on the high economic hardship, the socioeconomic disparity, racial disparity, and youth access to mental health. Casablanca can improve on overall access to mental health care for all. Birmingham can improve on easier access to mental health care for senior residents because of the lack of awareness. And Galloway can improve on the lack of mental health care. They need to expand on healthcare system.
Chicago's main aim is to provide more funding to neutralize the costly outcome of using mental health services. They've begun with $8 million, but that figure will only increase to help the communities of color and more impoverished communities in general. As for Casablanca, they need to implement more programs raising awareness to destigmatize mental health. Birmingham also needs to raise more awareness, but target these programs towards senior residents to make them more well-informed, creating a more comfortable environment around mental health services. And finally, Galway needs to implement better infrastructure whilst maintaining the promotion of awareness of mental health and its importance.
What can each city learn from each other? So Chicago can learn from Birmingham about taking youth mental health seriously. We can also learn from other cities to change the cost of mental health care so it's not so expensive. Casablanca is beginning to improve more and more. However, a big step that they need to take from other cities mentioned is to destigmatize mental health so a better environment can be introduced. Birmingham and Galway, as cities, both can learn from Casablanca by building bigger and better infrastructure to mental health treatment.
Thank you. Group 4.
Hello, my name's Mia and I'm from Sydney, Australia.
Hi everyone, my name is Serena and I'm from Shanghai.
Hello everyone, my name is Amang and I am from Delhi. Next slide, please. We'll be presenting today on women in STEM. Next slide, please. The indicator we chose was the number of female professors and tenure holders in STEM. This was because of a two-pronged approach. One, this helps us see how common STEM education is, as well as how a society perceives education for girls and supports them in the long run. Next slide, please. The first city that we studied was Delhi, India. We see that women earned only about 80% of men's wages and did not comprise a major proportion of all people enrolled in PhD programs. However, women and their research in India was much more cited than that of their counterparts in the global north, especially the United States and the UK. Next slide, please. In interviews conducted personally by this group of students in Delhi universities, we saw that of an average number of 12 professors over a college career, only 3 were women teaching STEM subjects, and only 1 of them held tenure. Next slide, please. However, we gave the city the final score of 3.5 because while there is much to be done, Indian women have made strides in academia and in bridging the wage gap, especially better than many of their counterparts in the global north. Next, we studied was Sydney, Australia. The national pay gap reaches up to 20% in numerous industries, and only 14.5% of all STEM professors across Australia were women. At a major university in Sydney, only 1/4 of all professors teaching STEM was a woman. Next slide, please. We gave the city a total score of 3 on 5 because even though Sydney had some more professors than other cities in Australia, the number of women professors needed to be much improved, especially in the fields of mathematics and engineering. Back to you, Serena.
Okay, now on the graph, you can see that in Shanghai, the proportion of men in scientific universities is higher than that of women compared with universities in international studies or politics. However, even in universities that are closely related to STEM, there are fewer women compared to men, not mentioning some further studies in STEM that women can hardly be exposed to from other universities. From a macro perspective, about 33% of female scientific workers report being ignored, and about 32% of them face gender discrimination. Next slide, please. And based on these data, we were given 3.5 points for Shanghai, since although the gender gap is not so large in some universities, women are still at a disadvantage in STEM fields. Next slide, please. And now let's move on to Chicago. On a national level, women tend to be underrepresented in STEM, as women comprise 47% of the total US workforce, but hold only 24% of STEM jobs. Also, while women in college earn 57% of all undergraduate degrees, they make up only 35% of undergraduate STEM degree recipients. In Chicago specifically, tenured women make up only 26% of STEM faculty. And next slide, please. As a result, we decide to give 3 points to Chicago, since it must increase the number of female professors in STEM and the number of tenured women to ensure the gender equity in STEM.
So some of the solutions that we've identified for increasing the number of women with tenure or who are professors in STEM include setting a quota for tenured women or female professors in STEM. So although at first this representation might be slightly forced, overall we believe that it will improve the acceptance of women's ability to hold these positions and also increase the visibility of women in STEM. Another way that we've proposed to increase visibility is to showcase women in these positions as leaders and provide opportunities for mentorships with young women entering STEM, as representation can really matter. Next slide. We also believe that improving workplace culture to be more accepting and respectful towards women will encourage them to apply for and stay in higher academic positions. This also speaks to the last point on our slides, as more work to retain women in STEM is really needed. On the point of retention, support for women who have or may plan to have families is important for the promotion of women and retention of women in higher academic positions, particularly considering the timing of promotions and families can coincide. Paid parental leave and giving women equal consideration for promotions, regardless of their age, is important for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Group 5.
Hi, I'm Athena from Chicago.
Hi, I'm Coco and I'm from Toronto.
Hi, I'm Johanna. I'm from Prague.
Hi, I'm Latricia and I'm from Chicago.
Hi, I'm Smeya and I'm from Gothenburg.
For group 5, our focus was mental health and our indicator was access of breast cancer patients to support groups. And for Gothenburg, we gave them a 4. For Prague, we gave them a 4. For Toronto, we gave them a 5. And for Chicago, we gave them a 4. Why support groups are important to the mental health of women struggling with breast cancer. 1, they give them a connection during the experience that can sometimes feel isolating. 2, they give tips and information from those who've been through the same thing. And lastly, they give opportunities to use your knowledge to help others.
We gave Gothenburg the score of a 4 because the availability, because the positives are that it's available both digital and in person. The cost is free, but the negatives were that the support for there are no support for specific group of women like age and stuff, and the access to information is not unified and it needs more awareness.
So for Toronto, we gave them a 5, which means like little to no improvement. So for availability due to COVID right now, most of the support groups are all of the support groups are online, but they are accessible and available to anybody. In Canada, we have really great access to information via the Canadian Cancer Society website. So you can visit this website, which will give you resources for support groups, information, treatment centers, basically anything you need to know as somebody dealing with cancer or having a family member dealing with cancer. Support for specific groups of women, we found individual groups that are specialized for younger women and another one specific for Asian Canadians. The cost in Toronto is free, which is really important because that provides a lot more availability and accessibility for these groups that are so essential for women who are dealing with breast cancer.
As for Prague, we gave Prague a 4, which means that it needs little improvement because availability, there are groups that are both digital and in person. A lot of groups go hiking and biking together. One group even wrote a book together. There are specific groups for women. There is an organization that centers around young women, but there is no organization that would center around ethnic minorities. The cost is free and all of the support groups are state funded. But the one problem that we found was that there was no database of support groups and they are very often very difficult to find. Some women even said that they wouldn't have found their support group were it not for little posters in doctors' offices.
We gave Chicago a 4 because there are many groups throughout the Chicago area that offer support for people in all areas, no matter the community. There's both online and in-person access to the information. There are countless support groups that can help women in the way they need it. Although a lot are free, some do cost or look for insurance to cover the cost of your services.
Hi, my name is Aria and I'm a member of Group 6. We're focused on women in STEM.
Hi, I'm Carlotta from Milan.
Hi, I'm Claudia from Chicago.
Hi, I'm Shiza from Chicago.
Hi, I'm Yara from Hamburg.
So we gave Milan a 3 because it's doing quite well, but it could do more. A positive initiative organized by the city every April is STEM in the City, when loads of webinars are organized to promote STEM subjects, especially among women. As far as computer science is concerned, the only program we could find was the Coding Girls project, inspired by the Americans Girls Who Code, and the goal is to teach young girls in schools how to code. However, it is only available for a few schools, so we wish to see more programs like this. Something very positive is the financial support offered by the University of Milan to young mothers who study STEM subjects, but still only 20 to 30% of STEM students are women, though this number is increasing.
In Hamburg, 46% of students are female, but they account for only 28.9% of students in STEM. These statistics get even lower for computer science, as it is a much less common profession and career path. Hamburg is making some changes though. They have created quite a few opportunities for women to get into computer science, such as HAW Hamburg, an exchange program that encourages women to be involved in computer science. The number of women in STEM careers in Hamburg in 2013 was 14.6%, and then it raised to 15.2% till 2017. Hamburg receives a 3 because even though the statistics show low percentages of women involved in STEM, much less in computer science, the numbers seem to be slowly increasing over the years. In addition, the higher percentage of students that were studying STEM shows some promise for the future. When it comes to computer science in Chicago, we gave it a 3.5. Chicago has a lot of different programs to offer to women interested in computer science, but we can see with different statistics how women are starting to take part in the field, and it's not as male dominated as before. Loyola Academy had 48.7% of STEM degree graduates be women. UIC had partnered with Breakthrough Tech to help encourage women to go into STEM, and women represent 20% of current graduates from UIC's computer science program. Computer science is also starting to be implemented in the US education system for all students to learn.
So for the first question, the question is, what can each city learn from each other? So we think that cities can all learn from each other. That's pretty common knowledge. But specifically, Milan has programs for women with children and women in lower class households to help them be able to afford their university. And we think that this should be implemented not only in the US, but in all countries. We also think all countries can improve on making more programs and workshops for women, just like the US does, that are accessible and inclusive for everyone. The second question is, what are the actions that need to be taken in order to improve the score for each city, category, or indicator? We believe that in order to improve the score for each city, we really need to implement more workshops, resources, and opportunities for women to go into STEM. Diversity in the field is more important, and to do that, we need to encourage girls that they can be in STEM and show them that in their schools and communities. Another thing that would improve the STEM score would be making sure that people in each city are educated on the issue of women not being included enough in STEM, and making sure that we are removing any stigmas that surround women in the computer science careers.
Thank you. Group 7.
Hello, my name is Bridget and I'm from Chicago.
Hello, my name is Maya and I'm from Chicago.
Hi, my name is Michelle Marie and I'm from Chicago.
Hi, my name is Yolanda and I'm from Accra.
Hi, my name is Jimena and I'm from Mexico City. Next slide, please. Next slide. Women are trapped in their houses with their abusers. Since the outbreak of COVID-19, emerging data have shown that domestic violence against women and girls have intensified. Home is not a safe place for everyone, especially for women and girls. This is the shadow pandemic.
So in Chicago, there was a significantly rising domestic-related homicides, and there was a significant decrease in the cases reviewed by the Cook County State's Attorney. And so the system's overwhelmed and most cases go unreported, and a lot of the victims don't know where to go for support. And there was a nearly 16% increase in calls for help from 2019 to 2020, and nearly 1,000 text messages for help were sent in 2020. Nearly 35% of survivors needed to seek another shelter, and that's because a lot of them are not financially independent. Domestic-related homicides also affected Black Chicagoans significantly more than any other racial group. And so we rate Chicago a 3 out of 5 because support systems created by Mayor Lightfoot exist, but they are not widely known and distributed equitably.
For Chicago, I focused on the effect of domestic violence on women of all ages. In the city of Chicago, the number of domestic violence homicides nearly tripled from 2019 to 2020, according to domestic violence support advocates. In 2014, almost 65,800 intimate violence incidents were reported to Illinois law enforcement. Many others went unreported. In between July 2013 and June 2014, there were 84 domestic violence-related deaths in Illinois, including 15 children. Children who grew up in families where there is violence may suffer a range of behavioral and emotional disturbances. If you are a victim of domestic violence, your children are 15 times more likely to be abused themselves and are more likely to die as a result of child abuse in the home.
So the situation in Mexico looks like this. In 2018, 7 women were killed daily. Before the pandemic, statistics showed that 10 femicides were committed each day. In 2020 and 2021, the number changed to 11, which means 11 lives are taken every single day in Mexico. By all this means that not 1, but 2 women have suffered from some kind of violence. Next, I'll show you some statistics that represent how the situation is. Next slide, please. So this is a graphic that represents the calls to hotlines. And as you can see, there are 143 calls to hotlines per hour. And the 2020 purple is a purple bar. So as you can see, the calls increased. Next slide, please. Same with this one. The 2020 bar is a blue bar, so it also increased. And then the next slide, I'll show you the femicides. So as you can see, the reddish pink bar is 2015 and the pink bar is 2020. So as you can see, the femicides also increased. And what about the government, you must be thinking? Well, the president has the audacity to deny this. He says that the statistics from his own government are fake. President López Obrador continues to downplay the problem of violence against women, claiming that 90% of the calls to domestic hotlines are fake. So that's why I ranked Mexico a 1 out of 5, sorry, because nobody's doing anything about it. And the only people that care about this are women, but not the government.
Next slide, please. Okay. At the start of 2020, the pandemic had shed a light on the realities of gender-based violence globally, and especially in my community, Accra. There's also been an increase in domestic violence as well as other forms of abuse. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, globally, 243 million women and girls were abused by their intimate partners in the past year. Next slide, please. The main reason for the high incidence is women in Ghana live in a highly patriarchal society, where the man is the head of the house and takes all the major household decisions. In 2008, 38.7% of Ghanaian women between the ages of 15 and 49 had experienced physical, emotional, or sexual violence by a husband at some point in their lives. Many organizations in Ghana need help with this issue. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. The Ghana government has taken some initiative in reducing gender-based violence. However, the reason I rated Accra 2 on the scorecard is because the government has to focus on creating awareness on gender-based violence and domestic abuse because it clearly needs more attention and there's hardly any information concerning these issues.
Although there is no direct solution to domestic violence, there are ways to prevent it from happening in the future. Additionally, for current victims of domestic violence, here are a few solutions. Call local police and describe your situation. If you can't speak, use the silent solution system by calling police, then pressing 55. Find a trusted person to go to in case of emergency. Creating an exit plan, keeping essential items packed, and having a code with a trusted person can all aid in the safe getaway from possible danger. Next slide, please. Finally, in an attempt to prevent domestic violence occurring in the future, it is important to teach consent. Teaching children about getting and giving consent from a young age is crucial to lay the foundation of learning that no means no, and it is necessary to respect others. There will never be one solution to domestic abuse, but these are ways we can try and tackle the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Group 8.
Hello, my name is Antonia and I'm from Bogota.
Hi, I'm from Karen. I'm from
Hi, I'm Melissa.
Hi, I'm from Chicago.
Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm also from Chicago.
Hi, I'm Emiliana, and I'm from Moscow.
So our topic was mental health, and our indicator was the suicide rates of women in the past 10 years.
So to my surprise, Amman actually has one of the lowest female suicide rates on an international level and amongst these countries, where there's around 0.93 per 100,000 women that die of suicide per year in Jordan. And although that is very great news, unfortunately, people are using this as an excuse to sort of neglect and disregard the importance of mental health in Jordan. And less people are acknowledging big mental health issues, which is resulting in very low care and treatment for people with big mental health issues, which is why I gave Jordan a 4 and not a 5, and which is why cases are on the rise, cases of suicide, that is. And I'd also like to say that most of these are caused by domestic violence and gender-based violence, which is also leading to mental health issues like depression and anxiety, and therefore suicide.
I rated my country 4 out of 5 because it actually needs a little improvement. According to the WHO, the year where most people committed suicide was in 2017, where out of 100,000, 1.9 women committed suicide and 7.6 men committed suicide. The year the rates were the lowest ones, out of 100,000, 1.4 women committed suicide and 5.9 men. The causes were breakups, not finding jobs, or mental health issues that were not being treated. There are hotlines, but they are not enough. It is clear that men need to seek for help too, because they are exposed to different environments that need different solutions. Compared to other countries, mine has a low rate. However, there is still room for improvement because our goal rate of committed suicides is 0.
So the number of female suicides in Moscow is significantly lower than males. And by significantly, I mean about 5 times less. And according to World Health Organization data, female suicide rate was 7.23 for about 1,000 citizens in 2018. And however, a number of female suicides is significantly lower than men, it is still really high compared to other cities. And there's still for sure a big room for improvement. But there is a positive news, and on the bright side, the statistic has been improving and there has been a positive dynamic. And since 2010, the number of female suicides has been decreasing. The main reasons for suicide is low income, alcoholism, and other really significant problem. And in order to stop suicides, we need like big systematical changes.
Yeah, so similar to the other cities, the women's suicide rate in Chicago is drastically lower compared to the men's suicide rates in Chicago's. There are many mental/behavioral health centers that are available to people of color, as well as the LGBTQIA+ community. So in contrast to men, women in these communities are more likely to seek these opportunities, therefore getting more assistance, resulting in a lower suicide rate. However, even though women's suicide rates are low with the opportunities present, the suicide rate has been steadily increasing throughout the previous years, indicating that there is still more room for improvement, which is why we rated Chicago a 3. Some causes are stress in the workplace, stress and opportunities, and discrimination.
So the solutions to this would be to raise awareness at schools and universities, and also social functions as well, and have training for teachers and professionals on how mental health affects different people, create
integrate government-funded centers of mental health with qualified professionals to help. Understand that mental health affects everybody regardless of race, gender, or sexual orientation, and talk to a friend or someone that you trust.
Group 9.
Hi, I'm Ellie. I'm from Petah Tikva.
Hi, my name is Grace. I'm from Chicago.
Hi, I'm Luz and I'm from Mexico City.
Hi, I'm Elena and I'm from Kiev.
Hi, my name is Remy and I'm from Chicago.
Here is our score chart and yeah, can we have the next slide, please? So the first country is Ukraine, and we decided to rate Ukraine A4 because it actually is the country which started the movement of women in environment and women who fight climate change. There are a lot of women who start their own organizations in order to help the environment. For instance, there is an organization called Eco Action, which helps to people to recycle in Kiev. This is the first recycling station in Kiev, which gave us a lot of progress actually in fighting climate change. Can we please go to the next slide? And also, as a person who studies in the technical university, I can see how girls are becoming interested in studying science and using the technology in order to help in the environment and fighting climate change. A lot of girls do different research and inventions. And also there are some women who find organizations in order to help animals and fight using fur.
So for Mexico, we rated Mexico a 4 out of 5 because there are a lot of projects and services and organizations that were created by women with the purpose of working towards a healthier environment, such as a web page that connects customers to recycling centers and a company that works to make agriculture a greener industry. The reason we didn't rate Mexico a 5 out of 5 is because even though there are a lot of projects that are working to reduce our carbon footprint, this movement is not as popular as others that are taking place right now in the country, and that is something that we could really improve to make a bigger change.
We rated Chicago a 4 because it has done a good job of addressing the problem that is climate change. For example, in the Chicago Tribune, there was an article about how global warming has been changing the temperature and the levels of the Chicago River. The annual average temperature in Chicago has increased 1.5 degrees in the past years. The city is lacking in group movement to combat this problem. However, singular women have been creating movements to fight this problem. For example, Gina Ramirez noticed industrial businesses polluting neighborhoods. She campaigned against toxic dumping in neighborhoods through social media and protest.
Another person who has advocated to end climate change would be Rihanna Gunright, who grew up on the south side of Chicago, where air pollution causes high rates of asthma. After graduating university, she created a program called Green New Deal, which advocates to end climate change and air pollution in her community.
Hi, I'm Ellie. I rated Petah Tikva a 2 because I wasn't able to find any environmental groups here led by women, so I had to research on a national scale instead. Women in Green is an Israeli nonprofit organization established in 1993 by Ruth and Michael Matar. They established the Oz Vegaon Nature Preserve, where they hold lectures, workshops, and cultural events. Naomi Tzur is one of Israel's most important green advocates. She helped to organize 75 green groups together, teaching activists how to lobby in the governments and how to hone in on specific issues worth fighting for.
Sorry. In conclusion, while some countries have been doing more than others, it is nice to see women taking initiative to stop global environmental issues. To answer the 3 questions, all 4 cities could create groups or larger movements to spread awareness about citizens living more sustainable lifestyles, as well as holding large corporations accountable. We can learn that spreading opportunities among girls can increase the number of women in the environmental field. Simply talking more about the dangers of climate change would be beneficial. Although there is more room for improvement, such as more groups, hopefully what is being done now is enough to start the fight for climate change against climate change.
Thank you. Group 10.
So hello everyone, my name is Anqi and I'm from Shanghai.
Hello, I'm Arya and I'm from Chicago.
Heidi, are you on?
So our topic is women in STEM. And so STEM has historically been a male-dominated field. When exploring countries, gender equity in STEM, we decided to focus our research on the ratios of women vs men working in those fields. This indicator shows many things, including an amount of women even applying for these jobs and the vicious cycle that influences girls starting from a young age. This presentation will explore how unequal the STEM field is in each country, as well as ways to improve the issue.
Yeah, so here you can see that almost every STEM relating field has a ratio of more men than women, and in some cases, like engineering, a lot more men than women. And a good thing that I found is that the amount of women entering these fields does seem to be increasing. However, in computing, it's actually gone down from 32% women to just 25% women. I can present the Osaka statistics as well. It says Japan has so many problems about women in STEM. Women students occupy only 38% of science students in Japan, especially in terms of the development of technology. There are only 16% of women students, and the number of women researchers is only 14.7% of the whole numbers in 2014.
For Shanghai, Chinese women are also moving fast in finding their jobs in the STEM fields. Data show that the number of ranking and senior female technical personnel reached 6.6 million in 2013, or 44% of the total, an increase of 9 percentage points from 2000s. By 2018, only 20% of STEM software developers are women.
For the gender equity scorecard, Chicago scored a 2.
I'm sorry.
Osaka scored.
Yeah, I'm Heidi from Osaka, and Osaka scored 2 for the gender equity scorecard.
And Shanghai scored 3. Next slide, please.
So behind the numbers, for the scorecard, Chicago scored a 2. The first reason was because when researching, only general USA statistics were found, meaning that Chicago does not focus or publish on this issue. Then using those USA statistics, we found that almost every individual field had more men than women working in that field. And also lastly, it is great progress that the amount of women entering each of these fields seems to be increasing.
However, in the field of computing, it has actually decreased greatly from 32% to 25%. So it is apparent that Chicago still has a long way to go towards gender equity in STEM.
And in Osaka, for the school card Osaka Score 2, the reason is that this problem has not improved so much since before. For example, the ratio of women increased only 3.3% within 10 years, 2004 to 2014. And in terms of university students, as I mentioned, women occupy only 38%. I believe such a thing happens because there are few career plans of women in STEM after graduated from universities in my country. Gender gap of STEM fields is one of the most serious problems as women's issues. We have to keep paying attention on it.
For the scorecard, Shanghai was score 3. The reason is that although women in Shanghai become gradually enrolled in STEM field, only 20% of STEM software developers are women, as I mentioned before. Luckily, the data show that number of middle ranking and senior female technicians personnel reached 6.6 million in 2013, or 44%, as an increase of 9 percentage points from 2000s. Therefore, we will conclude that Shanghai is doing well at this stage, but further improvements are still necessary.
Sorry. So here's some things that each city can. Here's some things that city can implement in order to solve this issue. They can introduce STEM from a young age. They can give all people access to STEM role models, and they can encourage women to stick with STEM. Thank you.
Thank you, ambassadors. Well done. You did it. Congratulations. I'm really proud of you. Those were great presentations. We'll now go into the question and answer session, and I'd like to ask all of our ambassadors to turn your screens on. And it's now my pleasure to introduce Ramona Gupta, Associate Director of the Women's Leadership and Resource Center. Ramona is an incredible advocate and community organizer and an incredible resource for the summit. And Ramona will lead the Q&A.
Thank you, Adrienne. Thank you, ambassadors. Congratulations on completing your group presentations. You all did a fabulous job. And now we have some great questions from our audience members. So ambassadors, I'm going to read the questions one at a time. And if you would like to respond, I'd like to ask you to raise your hand, and then we'll call on you one by one, and you can unmute yourselves, okay? So let's start with the first question. So, as a professional woman in STEM myself, I am so glad to see how many groups are looking at women in STEM. I want to ask the participants if doing these projects has changed your personal interest in pursuing a STEM career, either encouraging you or discouraging you. All right. Oh, look at that. So ready to answer. All right. So I'm going to call on Umang first. Umang?
Thank you so much, Ramona. So essentially, when I look at my career path over this next 10 years or so, I perceive myself doing a PhD and getting into a research career. And I think especially coming from a country like India, where the representation of women in STEM is fairly little, sure, initially it was a bit discouraging to know that when I go to college, there would probably be no one like me in my classroom. But at the same time, it sort of gave me the hope and inspiration as well, that maybe because there's no one like me, it gives me the room to put out the voices out there that aren't there. If no one sees my perspective in the research world yet, that gives me the opportunity to put it out in the world. So while initially discouraged, I do think that, especially coming from a country where the representation of women isn't as well, I am personally very excited to see how I can contribute to the research.
Thank you so much, Umang. Let's go with Aria from Chicago.
Yeah, so I definitely aspire to do STEM in my life. I've really enjoyed STEM throughout my life, and I have been fortunate to get opportunities and meet role models, some of which through this summit. And I think that, yes, it was definitely discouraging at first to see those statistics, especially the ones about computing. But then I realized that, I talked about as a solution, we can introduce new role models to other girls in order to encourage them to do STEM. But I think it's really important to have role models that kind of like look like you. And so as a woman, I think that would be definitely beneficial to possibly even be that role model for somebody else if I were to pursue STEM.
Thank you, Adia. Next, I'm going to call on Nina from Chicago.
I would say that I already kind of knew a lot of like the statistics or like the, this part, because I feel like I'm in the girl coder community. But I would say like doing this project has solidified my stance that I need to do this because I want to close the gender gap in computer science. And then I think I want to be like a good role model for girls and like set a different example. And I think that while it can be discouraging to be like, oh, wow, there's no one else like me in this job, it's also kind of, I think it's a call to action because it makes me realize that I think I need to do this for me, and then also just for other people who would also want to do it later on. So I think it's just reinforced that for me.
Thanks, Nina. Claudia from Chicago.
For me, for my project, we did women in STEM. So I had the opportunity to research and find, well, we were all like researching each other's cities and looking for things. And I kind of noticed how in certain places there were just barely any programs that I could find. But for Chicago, I found a few programs, and it was sad that there were so little, but it really made me want to be a part of it and like be a part of making history and changing this whole like stigma surrounding STEM and like specifically women in computer science, because I find it very interesting. So it's kind of encouraged me to be a part of something bigger and be a part of making it less male dominated.
Thanks, Claudia. Heidi from Osaka.
Hello, I'm Heidi, and I haven't thought about this topic until I'm on this summit because I haven't interested in this topic, STEM jobs. But through this summit, I know that this summit let me know that our country have to increase our choices of STEM careers to women. And it was a great opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ambassadors. All right, I'm going to move on to the next question. So this is directed at a specific ambassador, but I'm actually going to open this up to everybody. So Rebecca Yang, who works in international relations with the Office of the Lord Mayor in the city of Sydney, says, first of all, congratulations to everyone for the great presentations, and especially a big thank you to our Sydney ambassador for representing our city. So Rebecca had a question directed toward Mia from Sydney. What do you think of the female representation in Australian politics, and what would you suggest to improve or change? And I'd actually like to open that up to all of the ambassadors. What do you think about the representation of women in your city or your country's politics, and what would you suggest to improve or to change? So I think I saw Johanna's hand up first. So we'll call on Johanna from Prague.
Hi, I definitely wasn't first, but I don't think that matters. I think the main problem in Czech politics is that the issue of there being not very many women in politics isn't really addressed, and everyone kind of assumes that it's okay this way, and the issue is very dismissed. So I think the main thing that should be done is raising awareness around the fact that this isn't okay and why we need more women in politics.
Thank you, Johanna. Let's go to Mia from Sydney.
So hi, Rebecca. I think that Australia has had some representation of women in politics, like Julia Gillard or our current female premiers in Queensland and New South Wales. And I'm obviously pleased that this number is only increasing. I think though it's still not equal, and like that has to be addressed. In terms of creating change, I think representation is really important, but I also think removing barriers. Like I have no personal intention of going into politics because I don't feel like it's a welcoming environment for women or like particularly young women. And I feel like my voice would be dismissed by like a whole heap of male politicians. And I think changing the environment of parliament and the way it sees women and young women and that we can actually be leaders and we can actually have a voice would encourage a lot more young women and women to stand for parliament and to have their say and use their voice.
Thank you, Mia. Let's go next to Rose from Birmingham.
Hello. I think I'd like to add on to what Mia said. There is certain representation. However, I think there isn't enough representation in significant places that can make more of an impact. For example, here in the UK, we've never had a female bank of governor. And obviously this has consequences. For example, until recently we had like the tampon tax, because as much as a man would try, they can never
Rose?
how it truly is to live as a woman. And to have more women in these key positions, then we're creating a more equitable environment that is quite powerful and useful for everyone, not only women, but also men in certain circumstances.
A little bit of a delay on the sound there, but hopefully everyone was able to make out what Rose had said. So thank you, Rose. Next, I'm going to go to Haula from Casablanca.
So women in Morocco in politics, day after day, they are taking more parts of politics. However, men are still dominating. In terms of making changes, I think we should base our choices in like designing who will represent groups and will take responsibility in politics in terms of skills, not in gender.
Thank you, Haula. Next, I will go to Anushka from Chicago.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we're like all aware of like the lack of women in politics. But what I've always been kind of, repulsed by is the nature of the attitude that people have for women in politics, like our vice president. And I mean, regardless of, which Democratic Party or whatever, people call women in politics like nasty women, and there's just a lot more kind of like hatred directed towards women in politics than men in politics. And like some of my fellow ambassadors said, it's just such a hostile environment because being a woman in politics, you're subjected more towards kind of like hatred and just really nasty words and name calling, like, oh yeah, she's got an attitude, she's a nasty woman, just a lot more name calling than directed towards any other like male white candidate. And I mean, that's something that that hostile environment, that nature that people have when a woman is raising her voice in a a publicized government office, is just something that I think really needs to be looked at. So yeah.
Thanks, Anushka. I think we're going to move on to a different question. So We have a question here. There are a lot of great action items identified in the presentations for leaders in the different cities. Do you think that after this session, you would look to influence more of your friends to participate in leadership activities to help drive change from the bottom up as well? All right, let's hear from Leonella from Paris.
Well, that question is actually kind of ironic because I already started to do so. I've called a few friends because, well, we had speakers during the summit, and they all had organizations that allowed young people to participate in. And I know that I already talked about it with friends, so we have like it's a solid group, and then we can all share the responsibilities. So definitely yes.
Thank you, Leonella. Let's hear from Antonia from Bogota.
Yes, I think this summit has let me learn a lot from a lot of girls that have so much to say. And I've discovered a lot of many terms that I hadn't noticed before and I didn't engage as much as I wanted to. But now that I have the opportunity to be here to present, to research, or to speak with other girls in other countries and open up my perspective of the world, having a worldwide perspective, I could say that I'm now prepared to make a change. And for example, at school, I'm creating the school clubs. So I'm in charge of like creating which clubs there are going to be. And there's this one called Club of Change, where I thought that it could be good about talking, would be good talking about things related to women. And now I can talk about, for example, STEM and why our participation is very important there and how to create a change, not only in my country, but in other countries.
Fantastic. Thank you, Antonia. Let's hear from Jimena from Mexico City.
Hi, yes, I definitely want to encourage my friends. I remember something that one of the speakers said, that it was like, find your team, build your team. And then same with Jody today, when she said that she had this ability, but then her friend had the ability of creating a logo. And then when they united, they make this great team and they convinced a lot of people. So yeah, I definitely want to encourage my friends because yeah, many brains work better than one, and we can just like have much more ideas and influence more. So yeah.
Thank you. Umang from Delhi.
And I think, yeah, I mean, after the summit, I think there's just this one big realization that I've personally had is that you usually don't need to be in a more privileged environment or in a specific place to be a leader. I might not have crossed paths with most of these women ever had it not been for the summit. And I think it's just the realization that uh, the possibility and the potential for leadership is in everyone. It's just a matter of how hard you're looking for it. And I think that for me is a very big inspiration to really find that network within my community. Something I've already been working on for the past year is actually a nonprofit that's now in 16 countries. And two of my friends actually chair two of the bigger committees. But more than anything, it's also about providing an environment for sisterhood. And I think I'm just very grateful that I'm in a place, in a community that is open, that is resilient, but perhaps more than anything, that is empathetic and genuine towards other members of the community.
Thank you, Umang. Let's hear from Ellie from Petah Tikva.
Hi. Okay, it's weird just me on the big screen. Sorry. I just wanted to say, if it wasn't for this summit, I don't think I would ever meet so many of those great girls I've talked to. Sorry. Over this time, we had game nights together. We drawn on whiteboards together, which is what some of the most fun I've had in a while. And I thought I wouldn't be able to get through this. I thought I'll totally fail. I'll gonna have to leave in the middle of it. But the encouragement from everyone made me feel so supported and strong, even though I've been feeling horrible the past couple of years, and I can't express how much I love all the girls in the summit, and how I'm sure we're gonna keep talking way after this. We're gonna actually have another game night after the summit, just to like have fun and talk about whatever happened here. And I cannot express enough how much I'm just so happy to have met all of you and to be able to talk and to listen to some of the greatest women I've ever seen. It's so much inspiration, and I feel so much better about myself after this extremely tiring week. It's been hard, but I'm happy all of us get through it, and I hope we'll somehow meet again.
That was lovely. Thank you, Ellie. Just looking at the clock, because we only have a couple more minutes, I'm going to actually offer 2 questions, and you can answer whichever one you'd like, okay? So there's one question about, after learning more through the summit and researching through your group presentations, has your point of view about your country and how it's facing different problems changed from working on your group projects and from being part of the summit? So that's one question. The other question is directed toward our international ambassadors. What did you learn about the city of Chicago that you didn't know before the summit? So again, has your opinion about your own country changed in any way? And for the international ambassadors, what did you learn about the city of Chicago, if anything? All right, so I am going to call on Uliana from Moscow.
Sorry. So after the summit, I realized that, well, before I thought that Russia is kind of unique in facing many problems. I thought about it a little bit separated from other world and not like included in all this general world agenda. But afterwards, after talking to girls I know from Colombia, from Costa Rica, I don't know, from all over the world, I realized that there are some common problems, and you're not. It's not obligated for you to fight it in your own country. It's may be a lot more efficient to organize international communities in order to fight problems such discrimination in STEM or political or not enough women in politics. So yeah, I think about this experience is really valuable for myself, and about realizing the how general some problems are, and how it is like important not to communicate inside your own country and to communicate with citizens from all over the world. Yeah. So thank you so much, yeah, for this.
Thank you so much, Uliana. And if we can squeeze in one quick response from Morgan from Chicago, and I think that's all we might have time for.
Okay, I learned that from doing this, that Chicago and the United States as a whole could be doing so much better, and not just my topic of we did mental health, but all the topics that we went over today, that we could learn so much more from international countries, and also like just do a lot better in what we're doing for women equity and just in general bigger topics that we just need to work on, and it would be so much easier to just work together. And yeah.
Thank you so much, Morgan. Thank you so much, ambassadors. I'm going to turn it back over to Adrian.
Thank you, Ramona, and ambassadors. Just wow, I'm always just so impressed this week with you and everything that you have to share and to teach us. So thank you for that. The feedback that we've heard consistently all week is that people are less afraid of the future, knowing that you're going to be in charge. So it's just been a pleasure to spend this week with you. I'd like to thank our audience for joining us, and I'd also like to thank our staff for everything that they did to put this week together. I will ask the ambassadors to stay on for a group picture, but I will let our audience get back to their days. Thank you for joining us.